Hello and thank you for joining us on Nationwide on the network service of the NTA. I am Ruth Aguilera. Nigeria has pledged continued support to the troubled North African nation of Libya in its quest towards regaining and sustaining peace, security and political stability. President Muhammadu Buhari made the pledge while granting audience to the head of Libya's government of national accord, Fayez al-Sarraj, on the margins of the AU summit in Niamey, Niger Republic. State House correspondent Adamu Sambo has details.
It was the first formal interaction between President Muhammadu Buhari and the head of Libya's government of national accord. Their discussions centered on issues of common interest between Nigeria and Libya, especially recent developments in the North African country. Presently, there are over 6,000 Nigerians stranded in Libya after unsuccessful attempts to make it to Europe. President Buhari attributed the humanitarian crisis to terrorism and insurgency, as well as the drying up of Lake Chad, which affected the livelihoods of over 30 million people depending on the lake for farming, fishing and animal husbandry. Nigeria, he said, will do its very best in supporting efforts at stabilizing Libya. The head of Libya's government of national accord had told the president that there were a lot of deaths and injuries in his country, but his government is determined to put an end to the situation. Al-Sarraj declared that Libya contributed a lot to the establishment and survival of the African Union, and therefore it is now time for Africa to reciprocate. At a separate audience with the United Nations Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed, President Buhari stressed the role the international community needs to play in recharging the lake, as the financial cost is beyond the scope of the affected countries. The president decried the menace of terrorism in the Sahel countries, noting that the instability in Libya has been a negative force on the Sahel. On her part, the Deputy Secretary General told the president that the growing security challenges in Africa are adversely affecting growth and undermining the attainment of sustainable development goals. The Deputy Secretary General congratulated President Buhari for signing the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement at the AU summit, saying the entire world was waiting for Nigeria. Issues relating to the drying up of Lake Chad also dominated discussions when President Buhari played host to the president of the African Development Bank, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina.
We have to make sure that we create livelihoods all across the Lake Chad Basin area. We have to revive the livelihoods. We have to make sure that we reduce the shocks that people are having and that we have more resilient communities in those areas. And you know, I am fully committed to that, because you cannot integrate fragile societies. You can only integrate resilient societies and their communities.
President Buhari also engaged the Vice President of the Islamic Development Bank, Nigeria's Mansur Mukhtar, during which he commended the bank for ongoing interventions in agriculture, trade and investment, rural development and food security in Nigeria, saying the country will appreciate more support in other critical sectors. From Niamey, Republic of Niger, Adamu Sambo, NTA News.
And in another development, President Muhammadu Buhari has expressed delight for the ongoing interventions by the Islamic Development Bank in the areas of agriculture, trade and investment, rural development and food security. A statement by the Special Advisor to the President on Media and Publicity, Femi Adesina, says that the renewed commitment to support Nigeria in developing critical infrastructure is a welcome initiative, coming at a time the country is trying to fix the gap on infrastructure. The President commended the Vice President of IDP, Dr. Mansur Mukhtar, for his patriotism in supporting Nigeria in its development course. And the 12th extraordinary session of the African Union in Niger Republic has come and gone. But its memories will continue to linger in the minds of participants for a very long time. Now, one of such remarkable moments in history was the signing of the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement by President Muhammadu Buhari, thereby giving hope and impetus to the realization of one Africa market. Let's join State House correspondent Adamu Sambo for details.
Apart from unveiling the commemorative plaque, 5 operational instruments of the African Continental Free Trade Area were also launched to formally bring to an end the Niamey Summit of the African Union. Amongst the instruments were the Rules of Origin, African Trade Observatory Dashboard, and the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, aimed at supporting the creation of the desired active and efficient market. However, the most striking feature of the summit was the signing of the AfCFTA agreement by Nigerian leader President Muhammadu Buhari. He told his counterparts at the closed session that the instrument of ratification will not only be deposited expeditiously, but the strong leadership required in the implementation of the agreement will also be provided by Nigeria. Some of the participants at the summit spoken to were unanimous that Nigeria had taken the right step at the right time.
For me, I couldn't be prouder as a Nigerian, so I just came to tell Mr. President that I'm so delighted with that.
Last year, Mr. President Buhari delayed the signing at Kigali so that he can, in deference to his democratic ideals, consult with the organized private sector, consult with manufacturers, processors, and all those who will be affected by the agreement. So we have gotten wiser, and the consultations no doubt have provided clues and avenues of what we are going to do in order to ensure that there will be responsible trading so that Nigeria can benefit as well as other countries in Africa.
And it is our sincere belief that prices of commodities may come down and access to some of the commodities that we are lacking in the region, in Nigeria in particular, could be obtained, and some of the bureaucratic bottlenecks with respect to customs and others will also be reduced. But it is my sincere belief that the Borno will have some of the free trade zone in our own place, and then this will now improve the means of livelihood of the displaced communities in Borno State. The trade volume within the state will also increase.
The market is there, the opportunities are here, and with the level of entrepreneurship in Nigeria, I believe we'll take advantage of that. Already we are developing an economic zone consisting of over 800 hectares, and this year we are going to start on 100 hectares along Libya border coming into Niger and other West African countries. For us, we will take advantage of whatever is there to make sure that Nigeria and Katsina in particular has taken its share of the fallout of the agreement.
Expectations are that if genuinely implemented, the AfCFTA will not only unleash innovation, drive growth, and transform African economies, but also contribute to a prosperous, stable, and peaceful continent, otherwise referred to as the Africa we want. From Niamey, the Republic of Niger, Adamu Sambu, NTA News.
And the Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Mustafa Suleiman, is asking all Nigerian missions abroad, particularly those in Africa, to step up their economic diplomacy pursuit to enable Nigeria to derive maximum benefits of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. He was speaking on the outcome of the just concluded African Union Summit in Niamey, Niger Republic. Correspondent Makut Simon Macham reports.
Nigeria's missions abroad present a platform through which the country engages the rest of the world at bilateral and multilateral levels. The goal is to project and protect its national interests. Now that President Muhammadu Buhari has finally put pen to paper endorsing the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, Nigerian missions in Africa and the rest of the world have a duty to ensure that the nation's economic diplomacy is accelerated. Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Mustafa Suleiman, wants them to be more proactive.
I think the president's concern are well articulated in our submission to the African Continental Free Trade Area. Don't forget that there are still negotiations going on. You know, this thing is supposed to come on stream by July 2020, which means that there is still time to negotiate and see all the checks and balances that are restored in the Continental Free Trade Area.
On Nigeria's relations with Niger Republic, the Permanent Secretary says it is cordial and excellent, asking all Nigerians living in the country to be law-abiding and avoid tarnishing Nigeria's image.
Our message all the time is for Nigerians wherever they are to continue to be good representatives of Nigeria.
Those of them who are resident here, they don't give us any trouble. However, there are also a few who do not understand the need for documentation.
In Niamey, Niger Republic, Makut Simon Macham, NTA News.
Now, it is a known fact that President Muhammadu Buhari has signed the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which will enable member countries within the African continent trade freely among themselves. Now, this agreement is expected to usher in complete monetary and fiscal policy harmonization. That is what guests on Good Morning Nigeria, NTA's flagship program, are encouraging, which will enable growth within African countries. Abdulkarim Mohammed Zermi has the report.
The free trade agreement has been welcomed as a milestone to open up vast potentials in creating job opportunities and serving as a stepping stone to full industrial and manufacturing development within the continent while adopting a single currency. This is expected to boost economies as it begins to rely more on local goods, services and commodities in and around Africa. Guests on Good Morning Nigeria highlighted the other advantages which come with the signing. These include investment potentials, local alternatives to exported products and revenue generation.
Our service sector is a fairly strong service sector. We are very competitive in services, and the service sector is almost 50 trillion naira economy, and I think it portends a lot of advantage.
Economic integration has two things in theory and in practice. First one is trade creation. You are creating trade among the contracting parties, higher level of trade.
They did, however, agree that there were many obstacles to be overcome from the African Continental Free Trade Agreement area before any country begins to reap the benefits. Obstacles like building strong manufacturing sectors, large-scale investments, and cultivation of better bilateral relations between countries in the continent.
Our economies are dependent on imports, because today everybody in the world is eating not raw materials but manufactured goods. And if we don't manufacture, it means we have to rely on others.
And what is the future of manufacturing, industrialization? And what is the future of job creation, employment? What is the future of wealth creation? And of course, all of us know in this country how many jobs that the oil sector, the crude oil sector has created. Almost zero.
Experts say expectations are high, but if executed properly, it would open doors to greater stability for various economies and give rise to major growth in Africa. In Abuja, Abdulkarim Mohammed Zermi, NTA News.
On judiciary now, the People's Democratic Party and its candidate Atiku Abubakar have commenced calling their witnesses before the Presidential Election Petition Court. The first witness is Buba Galadima, who adopted his statement on oath, which he disposed to on the 18th of March 2019. During cross-examination by the counsel to the respondents, Usman Ustaz San for INEC, Wale Olanikbekon San for President Muhammadu Buhari, and Latif Fagbemi San asked Buba Galadima while he supported President Buhari in previous elections and wanted to establish that the witness fell out with the second respondent as a result of the fact that President Buhari did not make him a minister. This Buba Galadima denied. Another witness, Peter Obi, was employed by INEC as a registration area technician during cross-examination. Obi did not even know the second respondent that his statement was replying to. So far, the petitioners have tendered documents concerning 11 states. The states are Niger, Yobe, Katsina, Kebbi, Borno, Jigawa, Gombe, Bauchi, Kaduna, Kano, and Zamfara. The documents tendered are forms EC8C, EC8B, and EC8A. as well as the receipts for the certification of the documents. Counsel to the Independent National Electoral Commission, Ustaz Usman San, President Muhammadu Buhari, Wole Olanipekun San, and APC Lateef Fagbemi San objected to the admissibility of the documents tendered. Counsel to the respondents reserved reasons for their objections till their written final addresses. National Chairman of the APC, Adams Oshomale, and Tom Ikimi of the PDP are in court. And still on the judiciary, magistrates in the country are to undergo a continuous evaluation of their conduct and performance to sustain the ethical standards that the judiciary is known for. Now, the acting Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Tanko Muhammad, emphasized this during an orientation program for newly appointed magistrates in the country. Olabode Arewa has more.
Gathered in this hall are magistrates recently appointed to take charge of magistrate courts across the country. This training program exposes them to current practices in justice delivery.
I expect to be a better magistrate by the time I'm done with the training.
With what the acting CJN has discussed with us, it should shun corruption.
Drawing from his wealth of experience, the acting Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Tanko Muhammad, advised the new magistrates to avoid pitfalls which could be obstacles to their ability to deliver substantial justice.
To perform your judicial duties skillfully and expeditiously, without bias or prejudice, and must always remember that justice delayed is justice denied.
Your courts are essentially the taproots of the modern-day judiciary. All these are geared towards inculcating the highest ethical standards, as well as upholding judicial excellence at the magistrate courts.
The 3 days training program with the theme Promoting Excellence in the Magistrate Courts focuses on issues such as granting of bail, pre-trial detention, and writing of judgments.
In Abuja, Olabode Arewa, NTA News.
Now, the UK is to support Lagos State Government on Smart City Initiative. Michael in Lagos have details of this and all the stories. Hello, Michael.
Hello, Ruth, and welcome to Lagos. The British High Commissioner to Nigeria, Katrina Lang, has once again reiterated the commitment of the United Kingdom to support the Lagos State government in making the state a smart city. The British High Commissioner made this known after a courtesy visit to Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu at the State House, Ikeja. Nosa Osula reports.
The British High Commissioner said discussion with the governor and his deputy focused on strategies to be adopted by the Lagos State government and private sector partners to enable Lagos realize its aspirations to be a leading city in technology and innovation on the African continent.
To continue the dialogue that we have with the Lagos government and private sector partners around how the UK and Nigeria to come together to support Lagos and its aspirations to be a leading centre for technology and innovation. The world is changing, technology is changing, and Lagos is one of the few city-states in Africa that is really well positioned to take advantage of the fourth industrial revolution around innovation, robotics, artificial intelligence, and so on.
Katrina added that the UK would be willing to support Lagos specifically in 2 key areas of harnessing the waterways for efficient transportation and digital inclusion, which are the hallmarks of smart cities. The meeting was also attended by the Secretary to the State Government, Head of Service, Chief of Staff, and the outgoing British Deputy High Commissioner. In Lagos, Nosa Osula, NTA News.
Educationists have met to deliberate on new ideas aimed at promoting quality education at all levels. Abolori Ogbara reports that the 2019 Education Summit, which has participants from across Africa, also explored possible pathways of strengthening the systematic management of education.
Education, they say, is the bedrock of any nation. Global figures show that about 617 million children and adolescents are obtaining minimum proficiency levels in literacy and numeracy, while over 263 million are out of school, mostly in sub-Saharan Africa. To address this imbalance, global players in education are here to brainstorm with a view to preferring workable solutions.
And if we're thinking quality and relevance, it then means that the structure and the system of providing education must undergo a complete overhaul.
We want to come to some sort of consensus regarding how it is that we should move forward in order to ensure that we have strengthened education systems.
Speakers highlighted the role of emerging innovations towards solving the peculiar challenges impeding qualitative education.
We talk of the issue of teacher quality, teacher welfare, and teacher motivation as critical to delivering quality education in Nigeria.
Our point of entry is through developing, through our schools, leaders and innovators who can create that world.
Nobody is hiring somebody because they're really good at writing exams. We need to look at what are the skills. In our school, our fundamental focus is really on innovation, creativity.
Discussants at the summit underscored the importance of identifying and systematically scaling innovations such that they become more deeply embedded in policy systems. In Lagos, Abolore Obara, NTA News.
The National Film and Video Censors Board has introduced a film video authentication seal with a new certificate censorship as part of measures to curb piracy. The executive director of the board, Adedayo Thomas, disclosed these at a conference organized by the board in collaboration with the Department of Theatre Arts and Music, Lagos State University. Imoliayo Tokede has the details.
The conference tagged Film Distribution and Regulation in Emerging New Markets in Africa brought together filmmakers, distributors, investors, officials of the board, and members of the various guilds in the Nigerian movie industry to discuss current technological trends in movie distribution. The Executive Director, National Film and Video Censors Board, Adedayo Thomas, stated that the seal was produced to give films and videos a unique identity. Those not classified and approved would be easily spotted.
Encouraging filmmakers, especially the young ones that has the Android on their phones that make short films and things like that, to come through Censors Board and classify their works so that we'll be able to even showcase them outside.
According to the presentation made by the tech company, the seal has several unique security features that cannot be forged or manipulated. One of such is a unique code for traceability from the board to film studios and distributors. Speakers at the conference identified creativity, innovativeness, and adequate funding as requirements to produce high-quality films.
At least 60% of film is business. At most, 40% is art. So the whole issue of creativity must go under economics.
We need to continue to evaluate what we are doing in the industry, where we were, where we are now, and where we are going.
Stakeholders expressed the hope that the outcome of the conference will reflect on the industry in no distant time. In Lagos, Imoliare Tukide, NTA News.
That's our contribution from Lagos. Nationwide continues with Ruth in Abuja.
Thank you, Michael, and welcome back to Abuja. Now, Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, has formally resumed duty following his reappointment by President Muhammadu Buhari with a vow to redouble efforts to achieve the next level. Metari Ikman reports.
For a man who believes God has a hand in human affairs, Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, arrives his office to resume following his reappointment. But he walks into this surprise. Boss Mustafa describes his reappointment by the president as humbling and a call to national service.
I expressed, my gratitude to God first and to the president for reposing this level of confidence in me. what that does is that I am not about to take this confidence lightly. It's an onerous task that has been placed on my shoulders. And going forward, reflecting on the things that the country is going through, all that calls to question is a rededication.
As the SGF settles down to his onerous tasks, the governor of Gombe State came calling as his first visitor.
We stand for the ideals of the APC. So you should expect that we'll deliver good governance, we shall fight corruption, and we shall instill discipline on the system.
The SGF appeals for greater commitment from all agencies of government to drive the next level policies and programs to logical conclusion. In Abuja, Mitaire Ikben, NTA News.
Congratulations to the SGF. Victims displaced by communal crisis in Nasarawa State Southern Senatorial Zone have received relief materials from the federal government. As part of rehabilitation initiative, Abari Solomon reports that a unique package assessed by beneficiaries is input to promote agricultural activities. Okay, we seem not to have that story ready, but let's move on. The current security challenges, some of which are the result of youth restiveness, can be addressed if government fashions out strategies to provide employment for youths. Now, this was the submission at a roundtable on youth restiveness and social instability in Nigeria. Doin Dia reports.
With a recent demographic profile put at over 33 million, Nigeria is said to be one of the countries with the largest population of youth, especially in Africa. The result of this is a huge burden on the government in terms of providing gainful employment and social security for them. In recent times, the spate of kidnapping, robbery, banditry, bunkering, gangsterism and other violent crimes, all of which are attributed to massive unemployment, has however made it imperative for stakeholders to seek ways to address the issue. One of such is this roundtable meeting organized by the National Defense College in collaboration with the Federal Ministry of Youth and Sports.
There is a large population of youth in Nigeria which has not been optimally managed to effectively contribute to national security.
We can also achieve this by putting in place supporting social structures and mechanisms, as well as strengthening the rule of law, access to justice, and human rights approaches.
Peace Ogbein and Ifeanyi are amongst core members privileged to be on the round table.
An idle man is the devil's workshop. So when you don't have what you're doing, you tend to look for things to do. Like people want to make quick money, or just go into different social vices that cause problems in the society.
I've known how life will be after service. So I started now to actually plan myself and work on myself.
Why it becomes imperative for government to step up the strategies towards engaging the youth meaningfully, there is also the need for the social environment to support the government so as to contribute meaningfully to the growth and development of the country. In Abuja, Doin Dia, NTA News.
You're watching Nationwide on the network service of the NTA, and you can continue with this Nationwide on DSTV, GoTV, Star Times, and NTA International. But let's move on. There is every reason for now to believe that the second term of President Muhammadu Buhari administration is poised to give Nigerians dividends of democracy, as he promised during his electioneering campaigns. This is a remark by Senator Joshua Ladini on the recent presidential assent to a number of bills passed by the 8th National Assembly. National Assembly correspondent Abdullahi Aminu reports.
Several bills were passed by the 8th National Assembly. Most of them, however, have not gotten presidential approval owing to some observations by the executive about the clauses that need review. The recent presidential assent on bills, including those for the establishment of Federal Polytechnics Kaltungo in Gombe State and that of Daura in Katsina State, according to Joshua Lidani, clearly demonstrates zeal by the president to ensure that amenities are spread irrespective of social or political leaning.
And it will afford teeming youth the opportunity either for employment or for educational advancement or for entrepreneurship.
Sports Studio and NTA of the second round of the ongoing AFCON